Hey guys, so I have something a little bit different for you today. This is 0K. This is the game I worked on before Istrolid. It's actually where Treeform recruited me to work on Istrolid from. So I've been working on it for much longer. It's kind of my magnum opus, if you will. I'm very proud of a lot of the design that went into this. And you can see the echoes of that in Istrolid, because we took a lot of the design ideas from this and sort of built on them in Istrolid. But this is a traditional RTS. It has base building and unit management and economy and all that sort of stuff. And it's finally getting a release onto Steam. So within the next month or so, you'll be seeing this come out on Steam, but I'm giving you guys a preview now, and you can play it right now if you want to at 0k.info, or just for the Istrolid players, I can get you a Steam key, so you can preview the Steam version of the game if you PM me on Discord or through YouTube. So while it's a more traditional RTS, you'll see a lot of similarities between 0k and Istrolid. It has physically modeled projectiles. It has, you can see this little thing here, the tracks. That's its turning circle as it spins around. So units have turning circles. They even have turret arcs, but they need to turn their turret to fire. This is something we didn't have in Istrolid, is the units have to actually turn their turret at a fixed rate, and they have to actually turn their turret around. Some weapons have faster or slower turrets. They have different turning arcs. These are tanks. They have a much smaller turning arc than these bots here. These robots. This is the commander. He can turn pretty much instantly. That flashing means he's morphing, so he's upgrading. It's one of the things that we had in sort of a proto-Istrolid thing, is when you upgrade your commander, when you choose to upgrade him to another level, you can add different weapons. You can add range. You can add hit points. You can add, you can sort of pay for any number of customizable options as you upgrade him slowly. So people love the commanders. They think, designing them and upgrading them a little bit at a time, adding weapons and powers and stuff to them was really interesting. So they always wanted a game where you could design all of the units. They always asked, why can't we have this for every single unit? But 0K is designed with very specific strengths and weaknesses. This little yellow robot here is being disarmed by this vertical launch missile. It does no damage. The commander's doing the damage here. So you have one unit which disables the target so it can't shoot back, and then the commander is doing the damage and killing the actual target. This makes the disarm unit have to be used alongside other units. So it's all about unit synergy. You can see him dodging all those projectiles. They just hit the mountain behind him. Physically modeled projectiles, just like in Istrolid. So you can dodge them just like in Istrolid. These units are very maneuverable and mobile. These are tracking projectiles, tracking missiles. Much harder to dodge, obviously. Pretty much impossible to dodge, although they do actually have a turn rate. So here we now see another weakness of the disarm. It can only disarm one unit at a time. So you can see that little unit there. That's what the white flashing means. It means the unit is disarmed. It doesn't do any damage, but it means that the unit can't fire. That means it's an anti-heavy weapon. So it's not very good against these little robots here, because these little robots, there's tons of them, and disabling the weapons of one isn't very much good. But versus an enemy commander, for example, one of these, disabling its weapons is obviously really strong, because then it has to retreat from you. They still have the option to retreat when the weapons are disabled, which is why it's different from disabling someone's an enemy's movement as well, like EMP, which this game also has. It doesn't have an energy system, but EMP just is a full stun. But you have a choice when your weapon is disabled to still retreat and maneuver. You can see this guy's upgraded. He's upgraded double flame rockets. So he's added rockets on. He's added first one rocket, then a second rocket, and then he's put the flame upgrade on them so that they do burn damage when they strike. And they also have an AoE effect. So that's some of the upgrades you can add in this game. You can actually add we have modules which add flame damage, which is something a little bit different. Modules which add EMP damage, they up the EMP damage from a weapon, even if it doesn't have one, which adds slow damage. So slow is another type of effect. You can see this here, this purple aura. Any unit, it's a little bit like a stasis field. Any unit that walks through that gets slowed, also takes damage. You see we have little robots. These little robots, they maneuver quite quickly. And they can dodge these shots fairly. This is a really heavy tank. You can see the turret turn around there. It needs to turn before it can fire. And this unit, it can't really hit these smaller units. So it's just sort of ignoring them and then going for the economy infrastructure, you can see, targeting down these things. It takes a while to kill with all these little units. It's a big heavy tank, lots of hit points. It's trying to snipe out these metal extractors. But it does go down eventually. So just like in Istrolid, you can use lots of smaller units to kill a larger one. You can use lots of These are a little bit like fighters and things. They're faster, more maneuverable, they can dodge, but you can see at very close range we don't have anything like flak, so that unit. So one of the things about 0K is that all the units are designed with strengths and weaknesses. Just because the units are smaller or weaker, it doesn't mean they're worse. Actually, you can build every single unit from the start of the game, the heaviest units or the lightest units, and the heaviest units are huge because they're all balanced to be on the field at the same time. You start generally with the smaller units, they're faster, you can take territory more quickly with them, and as the game gets more dense, you get these heavier, larger units, but every single unit has a weakness, and every single unit has a strength. That other unit, it has a single powerful weapon with a low rate of fire, with an inaccurate projectile. Whereas this unit here, it has twin missile launchers, accurate with an area of effect, so they're really good against lots of small targets. But they don't have as much damage or as much hit points, so they're not as good against static defenses. Again, this commander messing stuff up with his twin rocket launchers, and also sending in lots of these little these bandit bots. Bandits, they're medium light raider bots from the shield factory. So there's different factories in this game as well, and each has a specific lineup. There's the cloak factory, has a few cloaking units in here, and these little robots. This is actually a model, 3D model that I made. Most of the units in this factory have 3D models that I designed. But each factory has a unique lineup of units. It has a different sort of play style. You can add on more factories as you play. Also has planes. These are all bombers. These are probably going to snipe out these are probably specifically designed for, where is he? This commander here. So he's serving up bombers to try and bomb the commander. They're a little bit like bombers in Istrolid. They have high burst damage. He still has the disarm weapon. So this guy's going to try and, this is a jumping commander. You see he's got a different weapon. He's got an autocannon. Yeah, here comes the bombers. Yep. So they're going to try and get through his hit points. He has a lot of hit points. But these are specifically designed to kill heavy targets. He had exactly enough bombers to kill it, which was pretty good. Maybe he had 1 or 2 left over. But these are specifically designed to take out heavy targets, lots of damage. So that fully upgraded commander, there's a big metal investment. Metal's one of the resources. Big metal investment in that to take out a target like that. We also have defensive structures, and you can have units in the back. Something that we don't have in Istrolid is healing, because it would prolong the game too much. But in this, you're building your own units, and so units can actually heal. You put a healing unit behind defensive turrets to keep them alive. And this is where these bombers come in. You can see when they fire, they get this symbol, no ammo symbol above their head, so I actually need to go back and reload at a, where is the, there it is. So they can, this thing only has 1 rearm pad. You'll notice this is a little bit similar to the way that we do carriers and bombers in Istrolid, actually. So all these units are currently out of ammo, so he needs to either build a new set of air repair pads in order to rearm faster, or he needs to wait a long time between bombing runs. You can see this has opened up this front again, because that who was it? It was Ra, actually. You might know Ra from Istrolid. Ra was relying mostly on his commander. So this has opened up a front. You can see this is how slow this plane is going. This one's going slowly as well, because these are dive bombers. They dived within range of these slow fields, and they took some slow damage, which is the purple bar. And see, this guy took some slow damage too, and that means that it slows them down a lot. And slowing down air units can be really good because you can actually hit them with ground weapons if you slow them enough. It's all physically modeled. It's all dynamic and physically modeled. So an inaccurate projectile, like we saw earlier on the tank, or these rockets here, they just won't hit a model of them don't even try to fire at a plane because they just won't hit. But you have accurate anti-air weapons like these missile launchers here, which can actually hit a air unit. All physically modeled. See, these missiles are quite accurate. Every single one is hitting, but the damage is quite low. Then you have dedicated anti-air units like this. This one can only fire at air. So you have flexible units as well as dedicated units. One of the other things that we have is terraforming. So players can actually terraform the terrain. In this case, what they're doing is they're burying their metal extractors. Metal extractors are the primary resource gathering thing. So they're burying them to make them impossible to kill with bombardment damage. Here comes another bombing run. Let's see what they're doing with this. Probably going to take out the fusion reactor. No, the commander. They're going for the commander again. You can see there's the anti-air units taking out the planes. You can see at the slow fields, they're too high up. Unless you actually dive onto this ball, they won't get hit by the slow field because they're too high up. Since it's all in 3D. But you can see they're building up this front line. It looks like they've really pushed the enemy back since destroying that commander. Those bombers really opened up the field because so much of that resources that Ra had was invested in his commander. But 400 is still using these rocket bots. These are another one of my designs. Again, all based on the same sort of design. But these guys are carrying big rocket launchers over their shoulders. I made this model. Little... So this is the effect of full EMP. These little stun drones, these little things here. And they can keep this target stunned, and this is the deep striker here he's doing with gunships. He's trying to take out this commander with gunships. But the commander has so many hit points, and there's all this anti-air in the area shooting the gunships down, so he's slowly losing the gunships one at a time. The stun drones go down, the commander is unstunned, and it just beats up the gunships, and he pulls it back. Not much hit points left. And can jump away and get away from that. Which is fairly lucky. You can see the big tanks again, they were trying to fire at those units, but they don't do much good. That was enough to open up a hole in the line. So now it's Ra's turn to try and secure some territory with defensive towers. You can see the difference between these projectiles. So these projectiles arc. Again, this is just the physical properties. They arc, and so when they hit the ground, if they miss, they'll hit the ground near the target, while these projectiles go in a straight line. So if they miss, you see they actually continue on and can hit a target behind the target they're shooting at. So even though these units look fairly similar, the weapons they're using look fairly similar, they're actually subtly different. These weapons also have an AoE. But it means they can fire over obstacles. So that's one of the advantages. These small little hills here, they can sit behind these hills and fire over them if they need to. Also Rex block projectiles, as well as other units. So even friendly units will block projectiles. One of the advantages of this factory is it has a bunch of shield units like this. See this has the shield. And so you put the bunch of shield units in front, and then you can shoot over them from the rear with these rocket units. This is something that these units, they're lighter, cheaper, faster, but they can't do that. They need a direct line of fire. It's a bit like shield tanks in Istrolid. So you can see how much we leverage. This is one of the things we really wanted to do is, this runs on the Spring engine. It was originally built to run, this is in a spiritual successor to Total Annihilation. And Total Annihilation had this thing, I don't know if you guys remember that game, RTS from the 90s. Supreme Commander and Planetary Annihilation were actually games that came out as trying to also be spiritual successors to this. But one of the things they didn't really do is leverage the fact that everything's physically modelled. So this is something that Total Annihilation back in the 90s had, is these turret turn rates, these unit turn rates, every projectile physically modelled. But one of the things we did when designing is that we wanted to leverage that. We want to leverage the physics of the game as much as possible, so you can really dodge projectiles, really get in there. You need to go around it. You see, they need to go around this wreck here. They can't, when they kill a unit, they need to move around the wreck. They can't shoot over the wreck. These units have indirect fire. Wow, you can see that big gun from this commander. A little bit like the D gun. They have these weapons which have a lot of burst. They can equip. When they level up, they can equip one. It's optional. They can also equip just a second weapon like that double rocket launcher guy, but they can also equip a. Let's see, it's in list. Fire special weapon. Yeah, they can equip a special weapon. This guy's equipped like a cluster cannon, I think. It's like cluster rockets or something like that. I forget what it's called. But these units here, these ones are riot tanks. They're a little bit like flak. They have a direct fire projectile with lots of AoE. They're getting swarms of smaller targets. These guys have a indirect. You can see these little guns pointing in the air. They have indirect fire ballistic projectile. And there's actually a difference between ballistic projectiles and rockets in this. Usually these guys are shooting ballistic projectiles, again, in a trajectory, like those rockets are, so they can go over obstacles. But you can't really see it on this map very much. But if you're in an elevation, you can do this with Terraform. You can build yourself a little ramp to walk up. And if you do that, you actually gain more range with the ballistic projectile. Lasers, on the other hand, are direct fire, so they just go a fixed distance when they fire, like this. This guy's trying to make a breakthrough. Who is it? North Chile NG. You can see he's using these really heavy tanks with a lot of hit points again, trying to make this breakthrough, trying to bust through the front line into the economy. You can see these stun drones, again, good against heavy targets, forcing them to retreat. There's this big tank with this massive cannon here. This is like it's a heavy anti-tank tank sort of thing. So there's a slow ray to slow down a target, and then this big gun, this big main gun to kill sort of big targets one at a time. So if we're targeting things like these grizzlies here, these laser cannon ship units, these have a really slow rate of fire. They have a perfectly accurate projectile, but not very. You see, they're not very good against picking up these rockos. They can sort of kite and pick them off one at a time. But you can see where the beam works is it actually shoots at a fixed location and has a duration. You see this time it hit actually 2 targets up here. So you can see it's really back and forth. The line keeps moving. Ra keeps pulling his units back, but when he sees 400 retreat, he pulls them forward again to try and get them in range, get those lasers, those heavy lasers, sort of zoned in on the targets. But 400 retreats back to his skirmish line of all these rocket bots, and he can retreat. He can give up territory in order to take up a more defensive position. But here come the tanks trying to get in close enough. But these guys are not slow. I mean, they're relatively slow, but they're fast enough to sort of march away behind the line. Makes it a little bit harder for them to get to them. A lot of this is also done with, if we look at the commands here. So these are all the commands that they're given on the map right now. And these guys are operating via a fight order. So these have AIs, a little bit like in Istrolid, where if you give them just, you can see the order he's given here is fight along a line. If you give them that order, they'll kite automatically. So they will, because they are kiting units, they have range units, they will retreat when an enemy gets too close, and they will advance, just like an attack move, only instead of just advancing then stopping when they're in range, they also retreat to stay in that range. So they move forward when the enemy isn't in range, and when the enemy does come in range, they move back to keep it in range. Sort of fairly simple. It also means that they dodge a lot of these shots. You can see these projectiles coming in. It means that their erratic movement pattern dodges a lot of shots, a little bit like AI. So we don't actually have anything in this. The AI in Istrolid is actually more advanced, where, and this is more integrated. It's integrated into the orders themselves. You don't actually set custom AIs, not really. In this, they aren't aware of all the projectiles going on. It'd be too difficult to calculate them all. It's amazing that we calculate them all in Istrolid, frankly. More fighters coming in and trying to get some damage done on these gunships. So these fighters are trying to snipe out these gunships while they're still in the home base. But they're not actually aware of where the projectiles are. If they want to dodge or anything like that, they just need to sort of move semi-erratically. But if you get manual control of them, you can totally dodge projectiles. Again, the fighters coming in, getting hit by anti-air defenses here. So the anti-air defenses are actually helping stop the gunships, actually helping defend the gunships. There's another hardened anti-air laser here. Prevents the fighters from coming in and taking out the gunships. Fighters are sort of air superiority craft. Aircraft that stop other aircraft, so you need anti-air to keep your aircraft safe. But they also have flak turret here, which can stop a lot of gunships. It's very good against flak is obviously very good. This is not like flak and Istrolid. This is actually a dedicated anti-air weapon. Doesn't shoot at land. So these bombers coming in again, anti-heavy targets again. So they're taking out these grizzlies, these really heavy grizzlies. And here, they've caught these tank killers, these Cyclops. They've caught the grizzly out of position. They've slowed it down. That halves its rate of fire and halves its rate of movement, which means they can slow it and then just kill it with their main guns. These are very heavily armoured tanks right here. He's trying to use lots of these smaller units to sort of just kite them. And slowly just whittle them down, but he needs some kind of anti-heavy option. He was relying on the grizzlies to sort of stay at range and kite them, but if these tanks are faster than grizzlies, so they do commit, they can do a lot of damage. This represents like a lot of value right here. Again, EMP, trying to stun out the EMP turrets, trying to stun out these targets, but there's just too many of them. So they can just take off the turrets one at a time. He needs one of these disarm racketeers would help. But you can see there's so many targets that he'd need a disarm rocket for every single one to keep it stunned. So instead they're using these, that's a shame, stunning his own. So there's friendly fire in this. You actually stun your own units and hit your own units with AoE and projectiles. But using these heat ray ships, these heat ray cars, these scorchers, They do lots and lots of damage. They're maneuverable. They can dodge a lot of projectiles, and they do tons of damage at close range. Their damage actually amps up the closer range they are. Sort of a little bit like melee units. They can sort of stay at range a little bit, but in melee they're incredibly strong. So here come the bombers again, taking out a fusion reactor. They're really good at hitting the economy, and that wins the game. It's the bombers that really did really well, taking out the commander early on, opening them up that line. They were pushed back pretty far, but they really swung it back in their favor. So that's sort of a look at the 0K. Again, if you guys want to give it a shot, you can go to 0k.info, or you can PM me for a Steam key, and it should be released within the next month or so. I will make another video for when it launches, hopefully. Also have a bunch of content ready for the next Istrolid patch, so look forward to seeing that as well. And I'll see you guys over the next little while.